Sophia jolted awake, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps, her heart hammering against her ribs. The air felt heavy, unfamiliar. Panic clawed at her chest as she forced herself to focus. But nothing made sense. She wasn't in her room. She wasn't even sure she was safe. And worst of all, she had no idea where she was. The room around her was unfamiliar, overwhelmingly grand. Soft golden light filtered through thick velvet drapes, casting a warm glow on the crystal chandelier suspended from the high ceiling. Every detail exuded luxury. The intricate carvings on the walls, the scent of rich sandalwood lingering in the air. It was breathtaking, yet it made her feel impossibly small. Then she noticed something else. A steady, rhythmic breathing beside her. Sophia's heart pounded violently as she turned her head. A man lay beside her, his broad, chiseled chest rising and falling with quiet confidence. He belonged here. This space, this world, it was his. But she did not. A name drifted into her mind like a whisper on the wind. Damien. She didn't know why she knew it, nor why he was here with her. But one thing was certain. Something had happened last night. And she couldn't remember any of it. Fear wrapped around Sophia like a vice as she jolted upright, her fingers clutching the silky sheets as if they could anchor her to something real. But nothing about this was real. The room was too vast, too pristine, too exquisite to belong to her. Heavy velvet drapes framed the towering windows, allowing soft golden light to spill onto the smooth satin sheets draped over her bare skin. Above her, a massive crystal chandelier glittered, its shimmering reflections dancing across intricately carved walls. The air was thick with an intoxicating scent. Sandalwood, a trace of smoke, and something undeniably masculine. Everything was unfamiliar. Panic rose in her throat, clawing at her ribs, but before she could react, a shift beside her sent a cold chill racing down her spine. Him. The man lying next to her, one arm lazily resting on the pillow, watching her like he had been waiting for this very moment. Damien. That name echoed in her mind, uninvited, yet inexplicably familiar. He was power personified. Even in sleep, there was something commanding about him, something unshakable. Broad shoulders, a sculpted chest barely hidden beneath the sheets, sharp jawline, and lips that hinted at something both dangerous and consuming. But his eyes, when they finally opened, were the most dangerous of all. Dark, piercing, unreadable. Sophia couldn't move. She was caught in his gaze, a silent tension crackling in the air between them. He didn't look surprised to see her panic. He didn't rush to reassure her, nor did he seem confused. No, he had expected this. He had been waiting. A slow, knowing smirk curled at the edge of his lips. "You don't remember, do you?" His voice was deep, lazy, yet laced with something far more dangerous. A challenge. Sophia's fingers tightened around the sheets, her pulse hammering wildly. No, she didn't remember anything. Damien's words sliced through Sophia's mind like a blade, leaving a cold, unsettling void in their wake. She didn't remember, not a single moment. Last night was nothing but a black void, an empty stretch of time where memories should have been. She squeezed her eyes shut, forcing herself to retrace her steps, to piece together the fragments of the night, the pulsing music, the flashing lights of the bar, the blurred faces of her friends, the cocktail in her hand, and then nothing. A sudden jarring stop, like a film reel cut off before the climax. Her voice cracked, barely a whisper. Her throat felt dry, her mind grasping desperately for something, anything, but it was useless. A void, a black hole where her memories should have been. I can't remember. Damien didn't speak right away. He just watched her, his dark eyes unreadable, as if he was analyzing every reaction, every breath she took. Then, slowly, he leaned back against the headboard, his voice deep and measured, laced with quiet control. "I found you outside the bar, alone, unsteady. You could barely stand." He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "I don't know what happened before that, but you weren't in any condition to make it home on your own." Sophia's breath hitched. No. That couldn't be right. She wasn't reckless. She never let herself lose control like that. But if what he was saying was true, then why couldn't she remember? Damien tilted his head slightly, his gaze sweeping over her like he was peeling back every layer of her uncertainty. I'm not the kind of man who takes advantage of a woman who's too far gone to know what she wants. His voice was even, steady, but there was a sharp edge beneath the calm. Nothing happened, unless you wanted it to. Her breath caught. A strange, unnameable tension tightened in her chest. He wasn't lying, but his eyes, there was something lurking beneath them, something he wasn't telling her. And the scariest part? Even without her memories, she could feel it, that undeniable pull between them, like they had been bound together long before this moment. 3 days had passed, yet the strange, unshakable feeling still clung to Sophia like a shadow. The missing pieces of her memory remained a mystery, but what unsettled her more was Damien. She shouldn't be thinking about him, shouldn't be remembering the sharp intensity of his gaze, the deep timbre of his voice laced with something dangerously alluring, and she certainly shouldn't feel that tight pull in her chest every time his image crossed her mind. But when her phone buzzed and his name, Damien, lit up on the screen, all logic dissolved into nothing. She shouldn't answer, but she did. Dinner, tonight. It wasn't a request, it was a command. Sophia bit her lip, hesitation curling around her. She should say no. She needed to say no. But instead, she heard herself whisper a single word. Okay. The restaurant was a picture of understated luxury. Soft candlelight flickering against polished silverware, the warm glow catching in the deep red hue of the wine swirling in her glass. Across from her, Damien looked every bit the powerful CEO, refined, controlled, exuding an effortless dominance that unsettled and intrigued her all at once. But no matter how he presented himself, he was still dangerous. Their conversation flowed easily, almost too easily. He was sharp, his wit intoxicating, his charm deliberate and precise, and little by little, the walls she had built around herself began to waver. And then, it happened. Damien leaned in slightly, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. His fingers reached out, slow and deliberate, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Sophia's breath hitched. His lips curved into a knowing smile as he murmured, "You feel it too, don't you?" The tension, the invisible thread coiling tighter between them. Sophia didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because they both knew she did. Sophia gripped the edge of the table, willing herself to ignore the strange, unwelcome warmth spreading through her chest. She couldn't allow herself to fall into this. Couldn't let Damien pull her into his dangerous world. And yet, his touch, just the faintest brush of his fingers as he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, was enough to send a shiver racing down her spine. His voice was low, almost lazy, but it carried a weight she couldn't ignore. Sophia inhaled sharply, summoning every ounce of strength she had left to take a step back, to create distance. "I don't know what you're talking about." She said the words, but they lacked the conviction she so desperately needed. Damien didn't smirk, didn't blink. He simply rose from his seat, moving behind her with slow, deliberate steps. Sophia's pulse pounded wildly as he stopped just behind her, his presence suffocating, intoxicating. She felt the ghost of his breath against her bare neck, sending heat curling down her spine. "You can run, Sophia." His voice was a dark whisper, laced with something she wasn't ready to name. Then he leaned in, murmuring, "Not a threat, a promise. Run all you want, but I'll always chase you, because you belong to me." A violent shiver coursed through her. She didn't want to believe him, didn't want to acknowledge the terrifying truth clawing at her chest, that some part of her wanted him to chase her, wanted to be caught. And deep down, she already knew she had lost this battle long ago. Sophia had never imagined herself here, standing on a secluded island where only the whisper of waves and the soft caress of the evening breeze surrounded her. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in deep hues of amber and violet, its reflection shimmering over the ocean like a cascade of scattered diamonds. Damien stood just a few steps away, yet his presence wrapped around her like an invisible force. He didn't have to touch her to make her feel the weight of him. His power was in his gaze, in the way he moved with quiet, deliberate control. She didn't know why he had brought her here, didn't know if she had the courage to take one more step into his world. But when he turned to face her, his expression more serious than she had ever seen before, she knew this moment would change everything. Without warning, Damien slowly dropped to one knee. Sophia froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. The golden light of sunset gleamed against the flawless diamond ring he held between his fingers. A small thing, yet carrying a promise too vast to comprehend. "Marry me, Sophia." His voice was low, steady, but filled with an honesty that stripped away every last defense she had left. "Let me love you forever." All rational thought disappeared. In its place was something pure, something undeniable, something that had been there all along. A single tear slipped down her cheek, her breath hitching in her throat. But there was no hesitation when she whispered, "Yes," and when Damien rose, pulling her into his arms, kissing her so deeply it stole the very air from her lungs, Sophia knew there was no turning back. But this time, she didn't want to. The sound of church bells echoed through the grand cathedral, their deep chimes reverberating off the ancient stone walls. Stained glass windows bathed the space in hues of gold and crimson, casting an ethereal glow over everything, a scene straight out of a dream. Sophia stood at the entrance, her heart pounding wildly as her gaze locked onto Damien, the man who was waiting for her at the end of the aisle. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, he stood with quiet confidence, his expression unreadable. But his eyes said everything. There was no doubt, no hesitation, only certainty, a promise. Her breath hitched as she stepped forward, each slow, measured stride bringing her closer to him. And then, finally, his hand reached for hers, strong and unwavering, grounding her in a way nothing else ever had. The priest spoke, his voice solemn and steady, but Sophia could only hear the sound of her own heartbeat thrumming in time with Damien's. "With God as my witness, I vow to love you, protect you, and cherish you for the rest of my life." His voice was deep, steady, each word an unshakable oath. Sophia swallowed hard, her vision blurring with unshed tears. She drew in a shaky breath, her hands tightening around his. "With all my heart, I am yours." And then, before the world, before the heavens themselves, Damien pulled her into his arms, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was more than just passion. It was devotion, possession, an unspoken promise sealed between them. And in that moment, Sophia knew this wasn't just a wedding. It was the beginning of forever. The first rays of dawn streamed through the open window, casting a golden glow across the room. Sophia stirred slightly, feeling the familiar warmth beside her. Damien's arm wrapped securely around her, even in sleep. She smiled softly, but deep inside she carried a secret, a tiny, miraculous secret that would change their world forever. Slipping out of bed, she pulled on one of Damien's crisp white shirts, inhaling the faint traces of his scent lingering on the fabric. Her fingers instinctively brushed over her stomach. There was no visible change yet, but she knew. She was carrying life, a part of her, a part of him. The sound of footsteps approached behind her, steady and strong. A familiar arm curled around her waist, pulling her against his solid frame. "Awake so early, sweetheart." Damien's voice was husky with sleep, but his warmth was grounding, anchoring her in ways she had never known before. Sophia turned in his embrace, looking up into the depths of his unreadable gaze. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with the knowledge that from this moment forward, everything would be different. She reached for his hand, guiding it gently to rest against her stomach. Damien froze. His palm lay still, tense against her, before pressing in slightly, as if searching for confirmation. "Damien?" Her voice wavered, thick with emotion. "I have something to tell you." The world seemed to stand still. His dark eyes searched hers, scanning her face as if trying to make sense of her words. And then his breath escaped in a slow, shaky exhale. "Are you saying—" Sophia smiled, tender and radiant. "We're having a baby." For the first time, every trace of Damien's usual control shattered. He just stood there, eyes wide, expression unreadable, except for the raw, undeniable emotion shining through. Then, without warning, he lifted her off the ground, spinning her in the air, his deep laughter mixing with the sound of her delighted gasp. "You're the best thing that has ever happened to me, Sophia." His voice was rough, thick with something deeper than words could convey. His lips found hers in a kiss that held every promise, every dream, every unspoken vow. And this time, in his arms, Sophia knew they weren't just two people anymore. They were a family. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the soft sound of Sophia's steady breathing and the rapid, thunderous beat of Damien's heart. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the tiny bundle in his arms. A baby girl, her delicate features peaceful, her breath barely a whisper against his skin. For the first time in his life, Damien felt small. He had held power, wealth, and influence in the palm of his hand, but nothing had ever felt as profound as this moment. His large hands trembled slightly as he gently traced the baby's face, overwhelmed by an emotion so fierce, so consuming that he didn't know how to contain it. He lowered his head, his voice thick with raw emotion, as he whispered to Sophia, "She is proof of our love, and you are my first, my only, my forever." Sophia gazed at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, but her smile was soft, radiant, like the first light of morning. She had once wondered what love truly meant. Now she knew. It was this moment, Damien, their daughter, the family they had built together. She needed nothing else. Her life was complete. Damien sat beside the hospital bed, watching as Sophia slept with their daughter nestled safely in her arms. The sight before him made one truth crystal clear. Love wasn't measured by wealth or power. It wasn't defined by the past or by the mistakes one had made. Real love was simply two souls finding each other and holding on, despite everything. He had once believed he was meant to be alone, that his heart had no space for anyone else. But Sophia had shattered that belief. She had walked into his life unannounced, turned his world upside down, and made him understand the simplest yet most profound truth. Love wasn't about control. It was a choice. Every single day. Leaning down, Damien pressed a gentle kiss to his wife's forehead, whispering a promise, not just to her, but to himself. Love is not about perfection. It's not about never making mistakes. It's about choosing someone every single day, through every storm, through every moment of doubt. And when you find the one who makes even your darkest days worth it, you never let go. And he knew, today, tomorrow, and for the rest of his life, he would always choose her.